So the first thing I'm making is my super decadent macaroni and cheese. So I have a box of elbow pasta. Now this is traditional and Southern macaroni and cheese. You can use whatever pasta you have on hand, but I like elbow because it just holds that cheese up really well. And the little crevices it creates with the cheese and the little butter goes through the pockets. You can't go wrong with elbow pasta. I'm going to boil this for 7 minutes until it's al dente. And I got some cheese to shred. All right, so I have sharp cheddar and extra sharp cheddar. I'm hand shredding a pound of my sharp cheese, and I'm going to cut my extra sharp cheddar cheese into blocks. It's my grandmother's recipe, but of course, it wouldn't be me if I didn't add my little flair to it. Right, let me pause, my pasta is ready. Right, so I rinsed it with some cold water to stop the cooking process and just setting it back there. I am making a cheese sauce. The fancy term for it would be a bechamel, which is a roux. It's basically gonna thicken up my cheese sauce. So I have a half a stick of unsalted butter. I'm gonna add to this a few pinches of flour. My grandmother never measured this. She just put it in there. Okay, I'm gonna break it down with a whisk. So now I'm gonna add 2 cups of whole milk. All right, now I'm gonna use a half a cup of heavy cream. Bring this to a rolling boil. It should slightly thicken up as the heat rises. I'm gonna add my sharp cheddar cheese now. I reserved a little bit because I like to top it right before I put it in the oven. This is the consistency I want. Almost like a nacho cheese consistency. Okay, my grandmother does not use cream cheese, but I like using cream cheese because I'm all about decadence. This will also be a great time to add a pinch of salt, pepper, and garlic. Just added my garlic powder. I'm gonna add some freshly cracked black pepper and a pinch of salt because sharp cheddar is already salty. You don't want to over salt your macaroni and cheese. Ain't nothing like a salty macaroni and cheese, honey. They'll talk about you. You don't want that. You want someone to walk in and say, "Oh, she make a mean macaroni and cheese." All right, I'm gonna take it over here. I'm gonna put my elbow pasta in my pot. I'm gonna do all the mixing in this pot. Grab my spoon back here. You hear that? You hear that? That sound, you hear that? You know you got some good macaroni and cheese. Whoo, look at this, y'all. Woo-hoo. All right, so last but not least, I'm gonna add in 2 eggs. I'm gonna whisk it in there with my sour cream. I find that sour cream just elevates that tanginess from the extra sharp cheddar, so I like using that sour cream in there. And this is what makes Southern macaroni and cheese different from other macaroni and cheeses. It's the egg. It's what's gonna hold the macaroni and cheese together. Pour it into my pot, fold in the egg. I have a 9x13 casserole dish that I put some melted butter in there. Just gonna pour that directly to the casserole dish. So now it's the time to add the cube extra sharp cheddar. When you cut your macaroni and cheese out of your casserole dish, you'll see these pockets of melted cheddar. Oh. Last but not least, the reserved sharp cheddar. All right, so I have my oven preheated to 350. I'm gonna bake this uncovered until it gets slightly golden brown on top and all the cheese has melted. Once that happens, I'm gonna get some foil and loosely cover it with foil and bake it for an additional 15 minutes to cook the center. I'm pulling out my macaroni and cheese. Ooh, I tell you, it smells delicious. You wanna see it? Look. Look at that. It looks like my grandma's, it actually looks a little better. Now I wanna get started on grandma's mac and cheese. This is an old school Southern way of making macaroni and cheese. There's no fuss. It is fail proof, and I have to make it for Grandma this Thanksgiving. I have cooked 1 pound of elbow macaroni till it's al dente. That means it still has a little bite to it. You don't want to overcook your noodles because it'll get really soggy in the oven because you have to continue to cook it in the oven. So you want to cook it till it's just al dente. That means it's still a little stiff. 1 stick of unsalted melted butter. I have 6 eggs. The first thing I ever learned how to make by myself was my grandma's macaroni and cheese. I was at my sister's house, and you guys have probably heard this story before. We were all cooking, and like everyone has to make their own dish. So they assigned me macaroni and cheese. Little do they know I'd never cooked before, at least by myself without adult supervision. And I said, I'll make the macaroni and cheese. And I'm like, oh Lord, how do I make the macaroni and cheese? I called my grandma. I was like, Grandma, I'm making your macaroni and cheese. What do I need to put in it? Well, she's like, well, who's letting you cook in that kitchen? I said, Arlene. And she said, okay, well, if you have to make it, put a little egg and evaporated milk. The canned milk is what she called it, canned milk. And if they have some of that heavy cream around, if you want it a little richer, you use the heavy cream, and you season your noodles and stuff with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and you shred up your cheese. So I just remember what she said, and I remembered what I watched basically my entire childhood. And I just prayed to the gods above, please just guide me through this macaroni and cheese because I don't want them to talk about me. So I made the macaroni and cheese, and it was a hit. A hit. So I've been making it this way ever since. I do have my other versions, but this right here, it's my go-to. So I have 6 eggs in this bowl that I've combined with 2 cans of evaporated milk, a teaspoon of garlic powder, seasoned with a little salt and pepper. I like a lot of freshly cracked black pepper. Pour my egg and milk mixture into my casserole dish that I've sprayed with nonstick spray and my noodles. Give it a mix. And remember, I have that melted butter in there as well. Okay. 2 cups of heavy cream. Have some cubed sharp cheddar here. Now, back when my grandmother used to make this, and I would be her little helper, she wouldn't let me cut the cheese, but she would let me put the cheese from her cutting board into a bowl, and she'll turn around and she's like, well, did you put the cheese in the bowl? And by the time she turns around, the cheese was gone. I would eat this. That was my duty. Hand shredded extra sharp cheddar cheese, about 1.5 pounds. That extra sharp gives it a little extra tang. The trick to making creamy and cheesy Southern baked macaroni and cheese is to make sure that your noodles are swimming in milk and cheese. You don't want to see any exposed noodles. No naked noodles. Before I cover this, I'm going to sprinkle with more cheese on top to get a nice even layer of cheese. This looks incredible. I have my oven preheated to 350. I'm gonna bake this off for about 40 minutes or until it gets nice and bubbly in the inside, and then I'm gonna take the foil off and let it cook for an additional 10 to 15 minutes or until the top is browned. And what I also like to do is spray my aluminum foil with a little nonstick spray so that cheese doesn't stick. That's a trick Grandma taught me. Oh my goodness. My grandmother is gonna be proud of me. Now that's how you bake a macaroni and cheese. I am making my famous Southern mac and cheese, but I'm adding sweet blue crab. You can't get any better than that. So I boiled the crabs for about 10 minutes, picked the meat, and now I'm gonna saute it. Putting in about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm gonna add onions and garlic to this. And I'm going to saute this for a few minutes until the onions get translucent. So when the garlic and onion have wilted down and become translucent, I'm going to add in the crab meat, and you want some of the crab to stick to the pan as well. But this thing is so cool. When you're eating the macaroni and cheese and you get that big lump of crab meat, it's like a gift. Now that the crab is ready, and I still got kind of some of that burnt stuff in there that I wanted, I'm going to transfer the crab back into the original bowl that I took it from. And I'm going to use sherry to deglaze the pan, which is just fancy for saying take the good stuff from off the bottom. So I'm gonna use about a half a cup. Woo, baby. I'm gonna start on my roux. 2 tablespoons of butter. I'm gonna let that melt. I'm gonna also add in flour. That's the start of a roux. A roux has butter and flour, or some type of fat and flour. And I'm gonna whisk in 1 tablespoon. The roux is basically the start of a bechamel sauce, which basically is a elevated cheese sauce, okay? And the reason I'm using a whisk is because we don't want lumps in our roux. You see that color? It's everything from the pan, and as you see, we deglazed all of that brown stuff that normally you would think, oh, it's time to wash the pot. Don't you wash that pot. Deglaze it. Now we're gonna add in a pint of heavy cream. We're gonna start building our roux and our cheese sauce. That's good. Now I'm gonna use about 1 cup of regular whole milk, okay? I haven't added the cheese yet, but just the smell of the sherry and the garlic and all of the stuff that was in the pan that was left, oh my goodness. Now I have 4 ounces of shredded Gruyere, Parmesan, and about 8 ounces of shredded extra sharp yellow cheddar. These cheeses just work really, really well together. You get a good, funky, sharp taste from the Gruyere cheese, and we're gonna leave some sharp cheddar because we're gonna top it with more cheddar. And I'm gonna slide in that Parmesan. Just give it a whisk. 2 teaspoons of dry mustard. Dry mustard just gives us this really great bite. 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. And the smoked paprika gives it a nice little smoky flavor. I'm gonna also add in salt and pepper. Not only are we getting a bite from the mustard, we're getting a bite from the pepper. I'm adding in some freshly chopped parsley, thyme, and tarragon. And that's just gonna balance out all of the sharpness. I'm gonna let that cheese sauce simmer. I've already boiled 1 pound of pasta. It's basically just 1 box. And I have drained it. I did reserve about a cup of pasta water. I'm not gonna use the entire cup, but I did save a bit because of the starch. It's gonna help as a binding agent to keep the macaroni and cheese together. I mean, it's still a casserole, so you still have to have some type of structure. I am going to add this glorious cheese sauce directly in the pot with the pasta. Ooh, yes. Just give it a stir. And did you forget about the crab meat? I didn't. We're gonna add in the sauteed crab meat with the onions and the garlic. Cheese, crab meat, fresh herbs. Oh my goodness. You can't go wrong. I wanna add in 4 ounces of cream cheese just to make it a little creamier. And remember, we had 4 ounces of cheddar we let sit to the side for a very good reason. The cheese, let's give it a nice little crust on top. There we go. That looks delicious. I'm gonna pop it in the oven at 375 for about 10 to 15 minutes or until it gets nice and brown on top. I'm making cheesy, creamy, salty carbonara sauce. It's such a simple pasta to make. The base of the carbonara is this rendered down bacon fat. So here's my homemade pasta that I made. It's dried out pretty good. I have some salted boiling water here. Fresh pasta only takes about 3 minutes to cook. Al dente. Don't want to overcook it. That's gonna go for about 3 minutes. So now I'm making my carbonara. That garlic mixed in with that bacon fat. Wow. I want to also add in some frozen peas, a little over a cup of frozen peas. I love adding peas to my carbonara to add a little brightness and some veggies. All right, so while that cooks, I want to take a little bit of that pasta water because that's going to help thicken the sauce. I'm going to drain the rest. Oop, facial. Bring that over here, let that sit out. I'm gonna add my Parmesan to my bowl here with 3 whole eggs. So now I'm mixing the egg with the Parmesan and it's gonna give this creamy texture and of course it's gonna be cheesy. Now I'm gonna add in a little bit of my pasta. I'm not gonna add all of this. And my bacon that I took out. Now I'm gonna slowly add in a little bit of my pasta water That's gonna help thicken up this sauce. I'm gonna turn my heat off now to reduce the risk of actually scrambling these eggs. Slowly pour in my egg and Parmesan mixture. The egg yolk and the pasta water ties everything in together. Now I am making my collard greens stuffed shells. I've had some pasta shells that I cooked until it was al dente. It was just about 7 minutes. You're probably wondering how I got this idea of collard greens and pasta. Well, one day I thought about making lasagna for Brian, but he's like, I just don't want your typical lasagna. Well, can you do something different? Had some collard greens in the fridge that I really needed to get rid of. So I thought about it. Why not make a Southern style lasagna? Brian loved it. So for his birthday, I'm gonna do something a little different. Instead of making a lasagna, I'm stuffing it into shells. Now I am making the bechamel. So I'm melting 2 tablespoons of butter unsalted, and I'm gonna also add my 2 tablespoons of flour to help thicken the sauce. Okay. Now I'm going to slowly pour in my heavy cream. And that's 2 3/4 cups of heavy cream. And as it starts to heat, it's going to start to thicken up. I want to season this as well, a few pinches of salt and freshly cracked black pepper. My bechamel has thickened up. Now I'm going to add my collards. All right, just give it a taste. Make sure I don't need to add any more seasoning to it. That is delicious. All right, so I'm gonna let that cool. I've already diced 1 Vidalia onion. I've diced it pretty fine. Now I'm going to dice 2 cloves of garlic. So I like using a Vidalia onion because it's a little sweeter than your standard yellow onion. They're plentiful down here in the South, so I love using Vidalia onions. All right, so I've minced my garlic. Now I am going to move my cream of collards out of the way, bring another pot over here. I'm gonna add a little olive oil so nothing sticks. Now I'm gonna add my onions and garlic and get it sauteed down. Add a little salt to help bring out some of that moisture. It's like this, if I'm at someone's house or at a restaurant and I smell the smell of like onions and garlic cooking, I don't care what you're cooking, I want a plate. There is all of this flavor at the bottom of this pan, so I need to bring it up. Now I have some white wine that I like to use. Okay, so now that most of that alcohol is kind of cooked out, I'm gonna add my meat. I have a pound of 80-20 beef, that's 80% meat, 20% fat. Fat equals flavor. I have about 8 ounces or about a ½ pound of country sausage. Now that's my little Southern twist on there, is adding the country sausage and the collard greens. So country sausage is seasoned ground pork, also commonly called breakfast sausage. I like to also add in about a tablespoon of my house seasoning. Now that's garlic powder, onion powder, salt, pepper, and a little bit of paprika. Brian is going to enjoy this. Now I am making a meat sauce, so of course you gotta have some crushed tomatoes. And so this is something that I like to do, and this is what my mom has always done, is add a little sugar to help balance out the acidity. And then I'm also gonna add a ½ cup of chicken broth. So I'm gonna let this simmer for about 20 minutes until it gets nice and thick. Now, the longer you let it simmer, the more concentrated that flavor gets. So you can do it a little longer, but Brian is not gonna be out for too long. So 20 minutes will do for me. All right, that looks good and it's starting to thicken up. So this is how I'm gonna do this. I have my meat gravy here. Put a little bit at the bottom first, just kind of like you do a lasagna, so your pasta shells don't stick to your pan. Take a little bit of that tomato sauce, stuff it into the shell, and line them up. What I'm gonna do next is just get my cream of collards and just spoon it on top. And don't skimp with this, just put it all on top. It's just the more, the merrier. Now I'm gonna take some of this Asiago cheese, spread that Asiago on top. Cover this. All All right, 350, covered for 30 minutes. It's gonna be all bubbly and browned on top. I'm hungry. I'm hungry right now. Ooh. Yeah, baby. These are done. Look at that. Look how beautifully torched and brown these stuffed shells are. Look at all that bubbling sauce. It's a party. It's a birthday party in a casserole dish.